Hello, Tim here. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about how to make a molding like this. This is a quarter round molding. It went on a porch on a Victorian house. It was all painted. It's pine. And it's a flashback for me. I actually dated it from August of '05. So to make something like this, there's a number of ways you could do it. You could make a mold and cast it in resin or some other, or hand carve it. The way that works really the best, and the way this was done, is to turn it on the lathe. But you'll notice that these this piece here is inaccurate. You know, the spacing is a little bit off. It doesn't really matter when they're joined together. You don't pick that up. But in order to help us with spacing, I will be using the dividers on the lathe and show you how to do that. So how do you turn a quarter turn piece like that? You can't really do that very well on the lathe, except if you glue it up in such a way, and it's with a paper joint. In a previous video I talked about split turnings or paper joints, and in preparation for this one here, this has already been glued up first one way, and then I use a piece of a paper bag and glue this up like this, and making sure when this is coming together and you're gluing it that this cross piece exactly matches up. So this one's already prepared. You can see how it lines up like that. There's paper between each of these joints, and this will hold it together while we turn. The problem with the lathe is if you use a spur drive center like this and drove that in there, it's a high chance that you're going to split this all apart. So don't want to do that. Instead I use what I call a jam chuck. In a previous video I talk about these things and how to make one. It's basically a piece of wood, and this has been used for different things over time, but this is just a piece of wood with a 1 inch by 8 threads per inch nut that I just recess in here, and then put on the lathe and turn that, and then cut it square, and then that perfectly fits my workpiece. So that keeps that end together. The other end, the dead center, I do mark that with an awl a little bit, and then the ring around the dead center helps keep that contained. So that's all I do to prepare for this thing, and this will give us 4 sections of quarter round molding. So let's go to the lathe and see how this turns out for us. So now I'm all chucked in to make sure that I have the clearance to the tool rest, and roughing it down with the small roughing out gouge. And you'll see my hand on the back side there, just checking to see if there's any flat spots, and I just double check, and once it's all round, it's the right diameter because of the way I glued it up. Now I'm taking my dividers and I mark them off according to the original. So I have 2 different settings on those, and mark them all down the piece like this, and then I'm setting those lines in deeper with the skew chisel. And as I work my way up the piece, I'm highlighting those deeper and cutting in the V parts. Now double check with my original, make sure I'm on target. Now I just work up the piece and pay attention to which side of the line I'm cutting on each time. One of the tools that I'm using is the beading tool, which is a 3/8 square tool, and basically there's 3 tools I use: a skew chisel, the beading tool, and the roughing out gouge. So I'm getting pretty close to the end here. So now I once I finish this, I go to sand it with sticky back sandpaper, and I like this stuff because it doesn't slide, and you can use all the edges of it to sand your detail. And so all done with the sanding, and then just take it out, and there it is. So here it is. We got it done, and the fun part is now taking it apart. So all I do is take a chisel, make sure it's right on that crack line, paper joint. You can see it splitting there. I like brown paper bag. It seems to be the toughest stuff. Now we'll go to the quarter mark here. And there we do that. So there's our quarter molding. Let me see how I did compared to the original. Not too bad. Looks like it could fit right in there. So if you wanted a half turning like that for some reason, and we could leave it like that, or you can glue it up any combination of ways, but that's how you do a quarter round molding on the lathe. The next step would be just to sand that all off and scrape it. The best thing would be to put sandpaper down and rub it on your bench or something like that to get that off. You could soak it off with water, but I don't necessarily recommend that. But scrape it off just enough so that you don't see it on the side there. But that's how I do it anyway. That's how it's done. So you got we got one more split here. Just gently pull it apart. And there we are. So if you ever wanted to make molding like that, or for some other reason just make a quarter round molding of a certain size, glue it up in 4s and turn it down. Hopefully you find this interesting. I find it fascinating every time I look at it. It maybe give you a new appreciation when you go to a historic house and look at all the trim, look at the things that somebody actually had to make that, and they had to figure out how to do it. And some things are totally baffling when you get into them. But at least this little tip here to show you how some of it's done. Thanks for watching, and if you like this, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.